Alright, here goes nothing. I am gonna try my best to summarize the entire story of Hercules in less than 6 minutes. Wish me luck. Okay, so Hercules was the son of Zeus and a mortal woman named Alcmene, which made him a demigod, half human, half divine. Now, Zeus really wanted a son, but Hera, his wife, did not. But I don't have time to cover those today. And if you'd like to hear more about Hercules, specifically all 12 labors expanded, let me know in the comments. Until next time, my friends, I bid thee adieu. You can read them in my book, Heroes of the Olympian, or watch a different video. I'll leave a link below. Anyway, long story short, Hercules was basically immortal now. He purified himself, had done amazing things, and was super popular among mortals and gods alike. But sadly, he would die, but not in the way you'd expect. So, during one of his adventures, he met a beautiful centaur woman named Nessus, who tried to kidnap his wife, Deianira. So, Hercules tied her to a nearby tree and shot her with arrows. Before he left, he pulled an arrow out and gave it to Nessus, telling him to dip his rear end in the blood of the wound and rub it over his wife, claiming it would act as a love potion, making her desire him even more. But as Nessus was dying, he changed his mind, deciding to take revenge on Hercules. He dipped his rear end in the blood, but instead of rubbing it on Deianira, he put the arrow in his rear pocket, knowing that she would be forced to touch it. So when he died and Hercules came back to carry his body, Nessus said, "Hey, Herc, remember that arrow I told you to use? Yeah, don't forget to dip your rear in my blood before giving it to your wife." But Hercules was smart enough to realize that this was a trick. He threw the arrow away and refused to let Nessus's blood anywhere near his body. He even burned the centaur's corpse. But one thing he didn't burn was the arrow. Instead, he kept it as a souvenir. But years later, Deianira noticed the arrow was covered in blood, and she assumed it was from one of Hercules' battles. So, thinking that it was safe to use, she soaked a robe in the blood and sent it to her husband. It looked like a brand new robe, so Hercules changed out of his dirty traveling clothes and put it on. But as soon as he did, the fabric stuck to his skin like super glue. When he ripped it off, he tore his flesh, leaving huge bloody wounds. It was obvious he'd been poisoned. At first, he thought maybe it was Nessus's revenge, but he couldn't be sure. So he walked to the end of the world, climbed a mountain, and hung upside down from a nearby tree. He prayed to Apollo to heal his wounds, but the god simply said, "Dude, you should probably listen to people who are trying to help you. Next time, don't talk to dead people who offer you magic items." But Apollo did tell Hercules that if he was willing to endure one more horrible thing, he would grant him immortality. And Hercules jumped at the opportunity. He laid down on a funeral pyre and set it on fire. As the flames engulfed him, Zeus reached down and pulled his immortal soul up to Mount Olympus. And from there, Hera finally accepted Hercules as her stepson, granting him eternal life and making him a god. In some versions, he married Hebe, the goddess of youth. But regardless of how exactly he achieved it, the point is, Hercules became immortal. He won his place among the gods. And ever since then, he's been considered one of the greatest heroes of all time. He represented the power of being half god and half man, having the strength and wisdom of both. And the fact that he was able to redeem himself after murdering his family showed that no matter how evil you are, there's always hope for you. Okay, hopefully. She was super protective of their marriage because she was a jealous woman, but also because she knew that Zeus was a notorious cheater. Like, every now and then, he would go to Earth, disguise himself as a human, and seduce attractive women, even though they were usually already married. So Hera punished these women and their children, usually turning them into cows or horses or something. But she didn't want to make an enemy of Alcmene, because if Zeus could turn a woman into a horse, so could Hera, and she wasn't going to be upstaged. So she just made Alcmene's life miserable. And unfortunately for Hercules, when he was born, Hera was in a terrible mood. She didn't feel threatened by baby Hercules, so she didn't punish him directly, but she would have a reckoning later. So young Hercules grew up to be a great hero, skilled in everything from sword fighting to charioteering. But he was also super hot-tempered. One time during a party, he got mad at a musician, grabbed his lyre, and beat him to death. Now, this wasn't really a big deal. Back in the day, people regularly committed murder. But Hercules also had a destiny. He was meant to do great things, and that destiny required him to control his anger. So he went to see the blind seer Tiresias and asked for advice. Tiresias told him to find a good wife, but warned him to listen to no one. Sadly, he didn't. Instead, he listened to Hera, who told him to marry a princess from Thebes. And it was only after he married her and had children that he realized he'd been set up. See, while Hercules was away, Hera paid a visit to his wife, Megara, and turned her against him. Hera whispered to Megara that her husband wasn't faithful, that he spent too much time with other women, and that he didn't love her. And Megara believed her. She started nagging at Hercules, complaining that he never spent time with her. And naturally, he got really pissed off. One day, he snapped and in a rage killed his wife and children. Then he felt awful, so he went to the oracle at Delphi for instructions. The oracle said he must spend 12 years serving King Eurystheus of Mycenae and complete 12 difficult tasks called the labors of Hercules to purify himself of his crimes. And although Eurystheus was related to Hercules through marriage, he hated his guts. He saw Hercules as a threat, so he made those 12 tasks nearly impossible. They included things like killing vicious monsters, capturing magical creatures, and cleaning filthy stables without any shovels or cleaning supplies. Basically, Eurystheus hoped Hercules would die trying to complete them. But boy, was he wrong. Every single time Hercules finished one of his labors, Eurystheus found something to criticize and demanded he do another one. But finally, after 12 full years of suffering, Hercules completed his last task and was free. And from there, he went on more adventures, like fighting a river god, freeing Prometheus, and helping Jason and the Argonauts. Wow, that was fast. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit like and subscribe. So we all know the basic story of Hercules, right? Son of Zeus, goes nuts and kills his family in a fit of rage. Makes up for it by doing good deeds for King Eurystheus, slays monsters and whatnot. And in the end, everyone celebrates how awesome he was. You know, I always get asked to cover Hercules because, well, he's pretty important. He's still wrestling with his inner demons, but feeling pretty good about himself. Yeah, I know, stupid idea, but this is mythology, not a morality tale. And in a panic, she sends him that robe. Oh, but wait, you want more? Who knows what I might find next, right? That's the thing about mythology. You never know what crazy, exciting, dangerous thing might happen next. These stories have been around for thousands of years, and we keep telling them today because deep down, we're all a little obsessed with the unknown. We love to hear about brave heroes facing down scary monsters and coming out on top. Sure, it's nice to relax and listen to a feel-good story every once in a while. But let's face it, we're all a little tired of those. Give me the gritty, dramatic, action-packed tales, please. Well, I guess we can talk about the legacy of Hercules, his symbols, the ways that people remembered him, the stories that sprung up in his honor, the places he visited, the people he helped. But you know, when you look at the big picture, it all adds up. This was a legendary hero, a demigod who went toe-to-toe with the titans and monsters of the ancient world. And he did it all before he was even 30. But what if there was more to the story? What if there were hidden details and secret meanings behind these classic myths? What if you could unlock the true meaning of Hercules? Well, you're in luck because that's exactly what I do. I take these old myths and show you the deeper messages hidden inside. It's like therapy, but with more monsters. So if you want to know the real meaning of Hercules, subscribe to the channel and join me on this epic journey through the ancient world. Or we could dive deeper into his character, analyze his traits, figure out why he's such an enduring figure in Western literature. Art, theater, movies, tattoos, everything. We could explore the differences between the Roman Hercules and the Greek Heracles, how his image changed over time, how different cultures interpreted his life and work. Or we could just start over at the beginning and hear about those famous 12 labors. Just let me know what you think we should cover next. But when he puts it on, holy moly, the poison burns right through his clothes and sticks to his skin like acid. Uh-oh, things are not looking good. And if you think you can just wash it off, nope, it's stuck. Can't remove it. So Hercules heads to Mount Oda, builds a funeral pyre, and lays down on it. Now, normally, when someone gets burned alive, they don't look forward to being cremated. But Hercules has been through worse, hasn't he? And besides, he knows Philoctetes, this random young dude he saved once, is going to take pity on him and light the fire. As the flames take hold, Hercules hands him his bow and poisoned arrows as a thank you. And then, miracle of miracles, Zeus shows up in a chariot of thunder to take his son away from the burning pyre. See, up until this point, Hercules has been half mortal, half god, which meant he couldn't just waltz into Olympus. But now that he's dead, Zeus can claim his full divine heritage and welcome him home. Plus, according to some versions, Hercules and Hera, his dad's wife, mortal enemy since he was a baby, they made up before he died. She offered him her daughter Hebe, the goddess of youth, in marriage, which is like a super big deal. They're now immortal lovers, and that's how you end up with the happiest, longest-lasting relationship in all of mythology. Not bad for a guy who spent most of his life fighting monsters and making bad decisions. So halfway across the river, Nessus tries to ditch Hercules and abduct her. But he doesn't count on Hercules shooting him with a poisoned arrow, dipped in Hydra's venom, no less. Dying, Nessus pulls a fast one on Deianira, telling her that his blood is the secret to eternal love, that if she keeps it close, Hercules will never leave her. And of course, she falls for it, taking some of his blood-soaked cloth without thinking twice. I guess you could say she's a bit too trusting. He's rich, has a bunch of cool weapons, can totally whoop any ass that gets in his way. But there is this one girl, Deianira, daughter of King Aeneas, who catches his eye. Now normally, this would be easy, right? Just go up to her, flex your godly muscles, impress her pop. Boom, you're getting that date. But no, Hercules isn't that guy. See, another suitor has entered the chat, none other than the river god Achelous. And my dude is flexing actual godly power here, turning into a snake, then a bull, tossing Hercules around like a rag doll. But our hero holds his ground. When Achelous turns into a bull, Hercules locks on to that one horn and breaks it clean off. I guess that's how you win a fight against a shape-shifting river god. You break off his best party trick. And so Hercules wins the hand of Deianira, not through brute force or godly intervention, but because he outsmarted a god in his own game. Impressive. And I know there's already a ton of info out there about him, but honestly, most of it is garbage. Really bad sources. What we usually find is a retelling of those 12 labors, maybe with a few extra adventures tacked on, which means we miss out on half the story, the part where he actually grows up. We don't see him mature, change, make mistakes, fall in love. So yeah, I thought it'd be fun to just dive straight into his adult life, starting right after the labors. Yeah, that feels right. But you know what? That ending sucks. I mean, sure, it's satisfying, but that's just the Disney in us coming out. Today, we're going to hear the longer, darker and much more interesting version of Hercules' adventures and misadventures, including a tragic love story, some truly messed up stuff, and how he got to become a god after all. Great, let's do it. All right, so where are we? Right, we've got Hercules, newly famous, probably in his early 20s, physically maybe mid-30s mentally. Now the two get hitched and everything is looking great until they got to cross a river and our boy Nessus offers to carry Deianira on his back. Okay, so fast forward a few years and she hears rumors that Hercules is digging this princess, Iole. And that, my friends, is how the greatest hero of the Greek world met his end and claimed his birthright as a god. Meanwhile, I'll just be over here tracking down the last of the centaurs, searching for that lost horn of plenty, trying to keep the river god Achelos happy, looking for my next big adventure. Okay, so you've heard the basics of the Hercules myth, and you're probably thinking, wow, that was crazy. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to look at the 12 labors of Hercules. If you'd like to get more out of this series, consider following along on social media for extra content and discussion. Now, before dying, Heracles gets some assistance from his half-brother Apollo. So the sun god goes to see King Eurystheus and tells him that Heracles has accomplished something even greater than his 12 labors. And it's true. After Hercules ascended to Olympus, he became known as Hercules across the Greek world. He appears constantly in Roman sculptures, vase paintings, mosaics, and frescoes. And now he symbolizes virtue overcoming vice or the soul conquering temptation. Well, as it turns out, his story continues to thrive today. Both characters share a lot of similarities, that Hercules is less arrogant, more lighthearted, and less prone to making bad decisions. Well, probably because it taps into universal human experiences. Strength used for justice, struggle with personal flaws, atonement for past mistakes, the journey from mortal suffering to divine transcendence. Hercules wasn't born perfect. He became a hero by suffering, repenting, and enduring. And that's why his story still resonates with us today. I wouldn't recommend reading the comics if you want to learn about the myths, but it is entertaining to see how Hercules interacts with other gods and heroes. Otherwise, there are countless films, TV shows, and books that re-examine the labors of Hercules. Some are serious, some are campy, some are more faithful to the myth than others. For example, there's the BBC miniseries from 1998, which is one of the best adaptations ever. Or the 2014 film Hercules, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. In that one, Hercules isn't a god at all. Instead, he's a demigod who's forgotten his godly powers. Over time, he regains his abilities by completing his 12 labors. Now, personally, I don't recommend that last one. It's not very good. But the point is, Hercules' story continues to thrive in modern pop culture. Disney released a version of the Hercules myth in 1997, and it was a huge hit. Unlike previous iterations, however, this Hercules was more of a bumbling hero. He was more than just a strong man or a hero. He was a symbol of hope, a beacon of strength, and a reminder that even gods aren't flawless, but they strive to become great anyway. So next time you hear the name Hercules, remember he stands for something powerful, something worth striving for. Now to hear a funny summary of the 12 labors, check out this video. Or if you'd like to see how Disney changed the Hercules myth, click here. Stay awesome, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next video. He was more interested in saving Megara than completing his labors, and he frequently made a mess of things. Still, the movie was full of humor, heart, and memorable music, and it managed to stay true to the overall myth while changing many of the details. For example, Hercules kills the Hydra in a hilarious montage set to Phil Collins. I won't say. In this version, he only has to complete 3 labors to regain his godhood, not 12. Also, the movie's villains are Hades and his henchmen, Pain and Panic. Hades wants to overthrow Zeus and rule the cosmos. So he sends Pain and Panic to trick Hercules into killing his adoptive parents so he can never regain his godhead. Interestingly, none of this was in the original myth. Pain and Panic are entirely creations of the screenwriters. He's also a common theme in Renaissance art. Artists like Michelangelo and Rubens loved to paint him because he was the ideal heroic figure. Sculptures of Hercules show him flexing with his club held high. Paintings of Hercules show him wrestling monsters or taking a break from his labors to hang out with his equally attractive male friends. There's a lot of homoeroticism surrounding Hercules in these artworks. Notice, too, how he's always shirtless. That's no accident either. Hercules represents the power of the human body and the potential humans possess. Humanists saw him as a symbol of reason, strength, and human potential. They aligned him with the idea of the Renaissance man, someone who could accomplish anything, who was a master of many skills. Basically, we're talking about the classic buff Renaissance guy. He flexes, he wrestles monsters, he carries the sky, he wears his lionskin cloak, he holds his club high above his head. There are hundreds of images of Hercules, but two stand out in particular. First is the Hydra. The multi-headed serpent was one of Hercules' greatest challenges, so naturally he got immortalized in art for slaying it. However, while some depictions show the hero stabbing the monster to death, others show him choking it, demonstrating the god's immense strength. Second, the Nemean lion. Its hide was impervious to bronze weapons, so Hercules strangled it. And again, the hero was immortalized in art for the deed, but there's a twist. The lion was also known as the invincibility cloak, and later writers will claim that Hercules wore it into battle. Whether or not this was part of the original myth is hard to tell. Most scholars believe not. The lion was simply a fearsome beast Hercules had to kill. But over the years, the detail changed. Later still, the lion would become a symbol of Nemea itself, the region Hercules was said to have visited. And we know this because in the excavations at Nemea, there were several statues of the lion depicted in art. Now, the Greeks called him Hercules. It's the Greek form of the name. But later, when the Romans took Hercules under their wing and made him one of their own, they renamed him Hercules, which is the Latin form. This is important because while the Greeks saw Heracles as a hero, demigod, and later a god, the Romans considered him more of a man. They wanted to make sure that everyone knew he wasn't one of their gods. After all, Hercules was a minor god in Greek religion, but in Roman paganism, he became a major cult figure. In fact, during the early imperial period, it was illegal to sacrifice to any other god in the presence of an emperor without sacrificing Hercules first. That's how important he was to the Romans. Their emperors, starting with Augustus, considered themselves divine, yes, but also Herculean, and who could blame them? We have evidence of an Augustan coin depicting him strangling an oak tree like the one the Gauls mistook for Hercules. And Commodus, one of the most notorious emperors in history, chose the name Hercules as his official title. For a while, the actual Hercules was pushed aside in favor of his evil Roman copy. Of course, we don't know if he actually went around doing the 12 labors, but we do know that he was considered the guardian of travelers, athletes, merchants, and anyone who dared cross into enemy territory. Why? Because the Romans believed that Hercules stood against tyrants. He was a champion of order against chaos, civilization versus barbarism. And no one embodied civilization better than Rome. Heracles has accomplished 13 labors. Now, if you're asking what the 13th labor is, well, there are a few theories. Most say it's the death of the giant Alcyoneus, which was so great that it pleased Zeus to turn Hercules into a god right there on the spot. But if you've been watching this series, you'll remember that he already ascended to Olympus earlier after marrying Hebe, so perhaps the 13th labor is the marriage itself. After all, Eurystheus' cousin also required him to marry Megra, the king's daughter, and Hercules hated her and killed her in a fit of madness. So maybe marrying Hebe was penance for that sin, or maybe it was just another task in the list. But whatever it is, Zeus is happy with his son-in-law and decides to turn him into a god permanently. As a wedding gift, Athena gives Hercules her invincible shield, and Ajax the Lesser gives him his sword. Then, with the help of his friends, he carries the sky on his back. It's a gesture of goodwill towards his father, who will be freed from having to hold up the heavens forever. Finally, Hera makes peace with Hercules, reconciling the differences between them. She returns his wife, his children, and gives him a golden wreath as a peace offering. You can also find the playlist for all of these videos up here. Anyway, let's get started. Last time we left off with Heracles being sentenced to death by his cousin, King Eurystheus. Now, those are the events of life on Olympus, but what happens when Hercules dies? Well, as it turns out, he doesn't die until the end of time. And when he does, his body is burned and the ashes scattered across the earth. From his remains, new heroes, the Heraclidae, will spring up to carry on his legacy. And they certainly needed to, as there would be many false pretenders to the Hercules name over the centuries. So let's start by looking at the worship of Hercules. That's only one way Hercules was represented in Roman times. Let's look at another art. But now it's time to move past the days of the Roman Empire. Hercules didn't disappear after its fall. No, he was reimagined in medieval allegory. But what about after the Renaissance? What happened to him in more modern times? Nowadays, Hercules appears in Marvel Comics. He's portrayed as a funny, boisterous hero and close friend, and sometime rival of Thor. So why is that? Why does the myth endure to this day? Why did so many people care to reinterpret it? To conclude, let's revisit what Hercules means.